Welcome to the Church Answers podcast. My name is Thom Rainer. Always thank you for being a part of this podcast. Whether you're listening to it on your favorite podcasting app, I often see what those favorite podcasting apps are when I look at some of the statistics on occasion for the Church Answers podcast, but that's another story. And some of you, we have a small but growing YouTube audience as well. So why you want to look at me while I'm talking, I don't know, but you're welcome to look at me while I'm talking, and we can talk to each other via video as well on YouTube. Hey, today's podcast is called Why Some Members Who Did Not Return After COVID Are Now Returning. Long title, but you get the essence. Why some members who did not return after COVID are now returning. I want to mention this as we go into this. I told you listeners and viewers in a previous podcast, I'll be mentioning this several times. I am praying for a movement of praying church members for the pastor. I am praying for a movement of church members praying for the pastor. I created a book with that in mind, a 30-day book. Get your church members to go through this. If you're a pastor, do not be embarrassed to ask your people to pray for you. And this 30-day guide can be a tremendous gift for your church and for your pastor. The name of the book is When the People Pray. Very simple. It's about praying for the pastor. So get that. Hey, as always, we want to thank Belay, our sponsor, our founding sponsor, our always sponsor, our complete exclusive sponsor, and they are productivity experts. They're the ones that provide you the bookkeeper or the assistant, and they do all of the work. They do all the back end work. They do all of the payroll, everything, and you just get a productive worker, which makes you more productive because you bring people on to do the things that are not your sweet spot. And if you do the things that are not your sweet spot, then you will begin to see your church, your organization become more productive. Let me encourage you to get the eBook that they're offering our listeners and viewers called The Power of Productivity. Great book, great little book. Download it, go to Thom at 55123. That is Thom, Thom, at 55123. Okay, good news, folks. Some of the people who left during COVID are coming back. You may not be noticing it, but you might be. Some of the people who are gone 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and even 2 years, they are now coming back. It is absolutely encouraging to see more and more people come back, and they are returning to the church. And it may not be making up for all of the losses, but it is making up for some of them. Now, what do we do with these people? A recent book came out called Dechurching the Church, and it talked about these are some of the most likely people to return. It's pretty fascinating to see who is and who is not returning. But some of these are more likely to return, particularly those who were somewhat to more than somewhat active in the church before they left. Why did they leave? Well, there are a number of reasons. Some of them may have not been believers. Some of them may have other reasons that they left. But here's the main reason. They got out of the rhythm or the routine of attending church. It's a discipline. Church attendance is a discipline, like prayer is a discipline, like evangelism is a discipline. It is a spiritual discipline to connect with people in the church. And they got out of that discipline, they got out of that rhythm, and they have not returned to it. And yet, many of them are ready to return. Why? Because, quite simply, they miss the church and the fellowship. It takes them a while to realize that there's something missing. It takes them a while to have that sense that, okay, what's different about my life and what do I need to do? And there are a number of these post-COVID people who are coming back to our churches. So what does that mean? One of the first things we have to do is we have to welcome them. We have to tell them that they are welcome to come back. I was talking to a pastor a week ago, and that pastor said, I actually had someone make an appointment with me and asked me, is it okay if I come back? Because I feel badly for being gone so long. And so you definitely have to welcome them. Another thing that might not work in all churches, but I want you to just consider it, have something akin to a homecoming. You know what a homecoming is? In two of my churches, we had homecomings. I actually think in three of my churches, we had homecomings. And a homecoming is typically an annual event where you invite all current and former church members to come and just enjoy each other again. You know what that might do? That might give them the permission, if you will, to come back to church without being embarrassed because other people are coming to church as well for the homecoming event. Now, I know that homecoming is typically something that is associated with rural churches or small town churches, but it could be very effective if you decided that you wanted to let your church lead in a homecoming event where you invite as many former and as many current members who are still on the roll who may not be active to attend, because you're going to get those COVID dropouts. You're going to get the COVID period dropouts who will see this as an opportunity to come back. Another thing that you can do, you can let Christmas Eve services focus on those who had dropped out during COVID. Now, you don't have to do that explicitly to embarrass them, but you can have some type of campaign, some type of emphasis where you're saying, we're welcoming everybody to our Christmas Eve service. Now, I'm releasing this at the end of October. So what does that mean? That means Christmas Eve is 2 months away. You can start thinking about that now. And Christmas Eve this year is on a Sunday. So you could have an event like a homecoming event, if you will, on Sunday morning, and then you can have your traditional Christmas Eve service on Sunday evening. On Sunday morning, you will reach those who are touching the church in some way, but have really become inactive, primarily due to COVID. Christmas Eve is the time when most unchurched people desire to come to church. And so when it's all said and done, these are some of the ways that you can start reaching these people. Why did they leave? Many of them got out of the routine. Now, I know there are other reasons. I know there's church hurt. They were hurt terribly in the church. I know that there's cultural Christians, people who used to think they needed the label of Christian to be culturally accepted, but they no longer need that. That number is almost disappearing. I get that. But there's a segment of the COVID dropouts that are really desiring to return. We're seeing it in a number of churches. And if your church is intentional about it, you may not be reaching the church hurt people. You may not be reaching the cultural Christians. But if 20 to 30%, and I'm getting that number out of the air, I'm not saying it's official research statistic, but if 20 to 30% of those who dropped out just simply because they got out of the rhythm, one of the things that you can do in your church is find a way to make it easy for them to get into the rhythm. I've mentioned a homecoming. I've mentioned Christmas Eve 2 months from the release of this podcast. Those are but two examples that you can use to make people comfortable about returning because they may feel awkward since they have been gone for a season. I love these ideas. I love what God is doing in some of the churches. I just know that God is going to do more as we become intentional about reaching our community. And our community means reaching those who were once a part of our church, including the COVID dropouts. Thanks again for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. Thank you, Belay, always for being the sponsor of this. Folks, contact belaysolutions.com. You're going to love what they can do for your church, for your organization. Download The Power of Productivity at 55123, Thom to 55123. That's THOM at 55123. And get that book, and you will see the possibilities of becoming a more productive organization, better stewards, if you will. And as a result, you're going to see a healthier church. That's how Belay helps in organizations like the church and many other organizations as well. So thank you again for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. Every week we release 3. So as you're listening to this, there are 2 others. This one happens to be the middle one. So there's one before this and one after this, but they all drop at the same time. So you can listen or view them as well. Thanks for the ratings and the review. Thanks for the likes. Hey, you YouTubers, thanks for the subscribes. And thank you for being a part of the Church Answers podcast, where we're working to help churches get healthier and church leaders get healthier every single day. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth. If you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just two or three things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? Double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.